Hello, my name is Anson Asaka. I'm the founder of New Possibilities. And today I want to talk about some controversy that I saw on Twitter. Comedian Sheryl Underwood made some statements on her show, The Talk, which generated a lot of controversy and a lot of chatter on Twitter. And here's what she said. She referred to African American hair as nasty, as nappy. And many of us are familiar with those terms, nappy. I mean, a lot of us have heard that term for most of our lives. And I'm going to go into depth as to where that self-hatred comes from later on. But while she used these derogatory terms to refer to African American hair, she used glowing terms to refer to white people hair. She talked about how it was long, how it was beautiful, how it was silky. But yet African American hair she saw as nappy and nasty. And in order to understand where this terminology comes from, where this attitude comes from, you have to understand African American history. Unlike any other group of people, the African American didn't come to this country voluntarily. We came here shackled in chains in the bottom of a slave ship. We were sold as slaves. We were treated worse than the animals. We were degraded, humiliated, beaten physically and mentally. We were taught that white was superior and black was inferior. And even when the shackles came off, we went through a new phase of oppression called Jim Crow. And under this system, white supremacy was in every aspect of the law. African Americans were regulated to inferior sections of society. We were regulated to the back of the bus. We were regulated to the balconies of the movie theater. We were regulated to the corners of the restaurant. We could not eat at lunch counters. We couldn't enjoy basic civil and human rights. The best schools were reserved for white people. The worst schools were reserved for black people. Those are the type of conditions that we lived under. Those are the type of conditions we lived under. And those conditions, just by themselves, and that legacy of slavery, instilled in us a sense of self-hatred and inferiority complex. And it also instilled in us a sense of buying into the myth of white supremacy. So we saw in every aspect of life that the white person was in a superior position. So eventually we began to internalize the myth and the lie of white supremacy, and we started to hate our own black selves. And that hatred wasn't just fueled by the institutions of society, by the segregation in society. That self-hatred was fueled deliberately through the miseducation that our people endured. And that miseducation came through the schools and through the media. Our parents and grandparents read books like Little Black Sambo. They saw images everywhere degrading African Americans, depicting us as a grotesque people, as an ugly people, as a savage people. We are all familiar with the images of hatred. We're all familiar with the minstrel image that was presented to us, the exaggerated image, the distorted image of what it means to be black. The image where the features are overly exaggerated, where the lips are huge and red, where the nose is huge and protruding, where the eyes are popped out large and crazy, where their hair is spiked and exaggerated. All of these images put a seed into our psyche, a seed of self-hatred. And that seed has been passed on from generation to generation. So that is why we have this self-hatred in our community. We have been taught that in order to make it in this society, we have to assimilate. And assimilation basically means that we have to emulate the dominant culture in order to have acceptance. So that's where the self-hatred comes from. And it manifests itself even today. But all of those conditions were proven to exist. The condition of self-hatred was proven to exist when they did tests on children. And one of the famous tests was included in the arguments made in Brown versus the Board of Education. And that's the famous example where a child is presented with a black doll and a white doll. And they're asked to pick the beautiful doll. And many of them grab the white doll as the beautiful doll. They pick the white doll as the beautiful doll. When they're asked to pick up the ugly doll, they picked up the black doll. And that was in the 1950s. And the thing that's so disturbing is that after all these years of slavery, after all these years of Jim Crow, that seed of self-hatred continues today. And not too long ago, like a couple of years ago, someone did a reenactment of that test on children of today. Actually, this was like a redoing of the same test, but they applied it today. So it wasn't like they were just acting. They had actual children sit down in today's generation and go through the same test. And the results were the same. The black kids picked up the white doll when they were asked to choose the beautiful doll. And when they were asked to pick the ugly doll, they picked up the black doll. So after all these years of integration, we still have self-hatred in our hearts. And that self-hatred is put in the children's hearts when they're young. You have children that are being tested in these examples. They are between 8 and 9 years old, and even at that early age, they have already been taught to hate themselves. It starts with their parents. You know, they hear their parents say things like good hair and nappy hair. They hear their parents talking about light skin is beautiful and dark skin is ugly. We've heard, all of us, many of us have heard the dark skin jokes growing up. Many of us have heard people's hair being referred to as nappy growing up. And that stuff continues today. And the indoctrination, in a sense, starts when they're young, when they first get their Barbie dolls, for instance. They get the white Barbie doll with the long hair. So that's part of the indoctrination process. Then when you turn on TV, the primary image that you see of beauty is a white woman. So what do you want to do? The girl wants to be like the white woman, and the boys want to get a white woman based on the images that have been projected to them at a very young age. That's why there's no coincidence that many of these successful African American entertainers and business people and just successful African American men in general, a lot of them gravitate towards white women because that's what they have been indoctrinated to do. And when you have been indoctrinated to value the white woman, put her on a pedestal, our women, African American women, see that example. So they begin to identify with the white woman. They think that they have to look like a white woman in order to be beautiful. So that's why they wear weaves. That's why natural hair is not viewed as acceptable in the African American community, because we have been taught to hate it. Both black men and black women have been taught to hate our natural selves. Because we have the only image that's praised primarily is the white image. And when black images are respected and praised, more often than not, that image is one that looks closer to the white image. So lighter complexioned women are praised over darker women. That's why most of the time when you look at newscasts, a lot of times they have very fair-skinned African American women, and they hardly ever have African American women with natural hair. So I don't blame African American women for the manifestations of self-hatred. The blame, first and foremost, lies at the foot of our oppressor, the one who taught us to hate ourselves. And it didn't stop with just the school indoctrination and societal indoctrination in terms of the segregation. It also, self-hatred also was taught in the churches. We looked in the churches for peace. We looked in the church for a sense of security. And often what we found was a white image of God. Imagine the damage that that does to the psyche of a people. God is white. So what does that tell you? That teaches you basically to worship white people. So what we need to do as a people, we need to break this cycle. We need to end this inferiority complex so it doesn't go on to the next generation. Because it's being manifested in this generation when we hear the music, when we watch the videos where they depict the white woman or very fair woman as being the standard of beauty. And you even have some rap artists who sing about how they love white women or very fair complexion black women. And that's a norm. It's not something that's unusual. It's something that occurs every day. And they are continuing that seed of self-hatred. And we just have to do what we can to stop it. And the first way to do that is to learn about our history, learn about our greatness as a people. We need to acknowledge the beauty within us. We need to know that all the shades of blackness are beautiful. We need to love our natural hair and respect our natural features.